Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Looking at Game 1 WNBA Finals. We finally made it. Looking at the Liberty playing host to the Lynx here on Thursday night. I'm going to be taking you through each player and the props that I'm looking at for those players. We only have about 11 players to choose from at this point, so we can go through all of them together using propsmadness.com as well as props.cash. Link to all that stuff is in the description of the video if you want to use the tools that I'm using. Let's go. As we kick it off with Breanna Stewart and get into some Stewie stuff, I do want to remind you, if you want all the plays that I am making without having to wait for these videos, you do want to jump into the description of the video, use the link at wap.com, and you can go ahead and get a 50% off for your first month using code OCTSALE if you want to jump into that. So that's just a quick update on that stuff. Let's get into Stewie. Talking about Stewie here, I think what you have to look at here is head-to-head and go, this doesn't tell me anything, right? 24 points, 38 points, but then 20 and 17. If you look at her in the playoffs, in the amount that she's played here, 6 games, only over in 1 of 6 games, opening it up against the Aces. I do think this is a game that she'll probably be looking for her shot early to get off hot the way she did in this series and in the Atlanta series, where she only had to play 32 minutes before that was a blowout and still got the 20 points in that game. Don't expect there to be much of a blowout either way in Game 1 here for either of these teams. The thing is, if you look at her rebounds, those are going to look really good head-to-head in the playoffs. Pretty sporadic, but head-to-head in this matchup, she's gone over all 4 times. So the thing that does stand out to me is if you're going to play an over on Stewie, the rebounds at 10.5, it's a lot. It's plus 116, not much of an edge. The points and rebounds combined also has an over 4 hit rate, 39 per game, but that is skewed once again by the 38 points that she scored in this game, and the fact that she also had how many boards in that one? She had 18 boards in that game against them here in September on the 15th, where she just went clean off, and they still lost that game by 9 points. So either way, it's because Sabrina hasn't been doing her thing. We'll talk about her in a sec. One thing I've gone to consistently is under on the threes for Stewie, but she does get a little bit more action out there with the ability to shoot over either smaller defenders against her on the Lynx or players that are a little bit loath to come out there and guard her, like Napheesa, who knows that when she's guarding Stewie one-on-one, she does need to stay a little bit closer to the paint, and she can give up that three-point shot a little bit more. So she might have a few more attempts. I don't really want to have to tempt the fate at minus 154 for that, and that's pretty much the best number, maybe minus 150. So for Stewie, for me, everything's a stay away in Game 1. I want to see the matchups and how aggressive she is with the shot. Some of these shot totals here, 18, 15, 20, and then 27. So they're a little sporadic. Obviously, they went up as we go, but in the playoffs, she's at about 17 shots per game. So it's something that's a little bit scary for me for an over for her on the points. Moving into Sabrina, I'm going to start on props.cash to look at Sabrina and start with the points, because if we look at head-to-head for her, it's not a good look for this season, right? These are the 4 games from this season, 13, 23, 17, and 13. The thing that really stands out to you in those games, if you look at her her field goal attempts, right? And I'll just do this on Props Madness, a little bit easier to see. If we go to head-to-head and we look at the shot attempts, it's 4 for 21, 7 for 20, 10 for 21, and 5 for 14 in the first game of the season in May, before she started shooting a lot more. But that's terrible, right? So she's at 29%. I wrote that down. 14 points per game against this squad on the season, and that's in all. Excuse me, that's the 3 games that weren't the Commissioner's Cup. This game right here is the Commissioner's Cup, but all 3 other games, 14 a game. So she's at about 16 a game versus this team. 29% from the field and 18% from deep in all of these games for her. Not a great look, obviously. They are not really doubling her. And I will say, watching the tape back, she has a lot of open looks. She did miss a good amount of open threes. I know some people that I trust a lot. Even at minus 136, they're loving her 3-point shot, 3-point numbers in this one. You can see, even though she's never gone over 2 in this series so far this season, she's still at 2.5, over as minus 120. The books are giving us implied odds, telling us we think she's going to go over, in part because she's taking about 7 per game, and she should be hitting about close to 3 for 7 in the playoffs right now. If you look at Sabrina, and I can just pull up her playoff numbers here by filtering this on props.cash, you can see in the playoffs she's averaging 20.7 points, and if you go down to the 3-point stuff, she's making 3.3 a game on 7.2 attempts. And that includes one game against the Aces where she only shot it twice, and that was game 3, right, where they came back to Vegas and they were like, Sabrina's not going to do anything. Anybody else can beat us, but we're going to have 2 to 3 defenders around her at all times. I don't think the Lynx will play that way. They haven't played that way all season. They haven't really shown that they're going to double people. So Sabrina should still be getting shots. I would not be going under on her points or threes. I think they're pretty correlated for her to go over in this one. The assists are something for her that she hasn't done against this team, because a lot of people don't do that against this team in the playoffs as well. 5.5 has been right the number. Look how many times she's hit 5, right? 4 of the 6 games that she's played in the playoffs, she got exactly 5. And you're only getting -125 to the over. This is right on the line, not an edge for me there. So I think threes or points and threes to some effect would be an over for me with Sabrina. And I know that like this is a very good defense above the break against the 3, but this is the player that I think should be getting some good looks in this one. Jonquel Jones. What I'm looking at with Jonquel, whether it's points or rebounds, I mean, we start off on the playoffs here. Some good numbers with the points, but I would say she's had some better matchups, right? Alana Smith, once again, really messes things up for how you play the opposing centers, because she pulls the centers from the basket when she's on offense. So Jonquel, to get those defensive rebounds that you rely on to get her so many boards, not necessarily going to be there. I'm not sure what the minutes will be like for Jonquel either. That's what you look at with her against this team. If we go here into the props.cash and look at Jonquel and her minutes. So on the season for her minutes, she's at 29.3. You look at head-to-head for her. I'm sorry, that was the playoffs. If you look at her on the regular season, overall, she's at, this is still 29.9. In the playoffs this year, 29.3. So no difference there. If you look at the shot attempts for her, 13.8 points, 9.6 field goal attempts. That's the regular season. You look at the playoffs, still the same minutes like we said, 13.5 points, the same as 13.8, and 9 shots, 0.6 fewer. So all of the same numbers here at 13.5. 12.5 would be an over. Thing that comes into play here, this is, in terms of head-to-head stuff, you look at her in this 27.8 minutes. That's what I wanted to show you, is that she plays a few fewer minutes against this team, the way that a lot of stars do, because Alana Smith sort of messes up the math. And now you sometimes have to play smaller players against this Lynx team who's just full of good wings and guards and doesn't really have the bigs outside of Alana Smith and Myisha Hines-Allen. But more importantly, like, Jonquel's not going to have a great matchup on defense. On offense, she will. If she stays in there, I think she's good to get points and rebounds and get some of these putbacks. But either way, for me, once again, with Jonquel, it's going to be a stay away as well to start. Everything for her is just right around her averages. I just wouldn't be fading her with the idea that she's not going to get as many minutes. She's still right at her averages and should be playing at least 28 minutes once again in this game. So what about a player that I do want to bet on? Let's look at Leonie Fiebich and the young German rookie who has had a really good playoff so far. Starting with what we always look at here, just what were her regular season minutes and did she get a bump in the playoffs? For Fiebich, the answer is without question, yes. And that's something that we saw sort of progress through the season as they got more trust in the youngster, was she's going to get a few more minutes. On the season as a whole, 21.5 minutes, 5.1 field goal attempts, and looking at the 3-point attempts as well, 3.2 down here. So 3.2 threes, blah, 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 blah. Let's look at the playoffs. Playoffs, 27 minutes. That's versus 21 during the regular season. So clearly they trust her a lot more. I don't really have any asterisks for the games. Just pulling it up on Props Madness real quick, because you can see in the playoffs, no asterisks here. 25 minutes, 22 minutes, 34 in this game against the Aces in the opening round. But no notes there. Like, she was just shooting well and they just kept her in the game. As all these other games as well, 26 minutes, 28. So 27 minutes sounds right. Like, that's her average for a reason. I think she'll continue to get around that, at least 25. The field goal attempts don't go up that much, right? And the 3-point attempts don't go up that much either. 5 versus 5.7, 3 versus 3.7. Not much of a jump up in the 3-point attempts. What does go up is the percentages. She is shooting lights out in the playoffs. I don't know that that's something that you want to bank on, right? For the field goal percentage, 63.3%, and the 3-point percentage is literally 2 out of every 3 threes that she takes, she's hitting. Not sustainable. It's only at 7.5 points is the line right now. So 7.5 is low. We were seeing 8.5 at times for her in the last series against the Aces. So this is a little bit low for her playoff numbers, especially since she's averaging 10.5 in the playoffs. But once again, those shooting percentages are very high and not something I want to have to bank on. Plus the 21-point outlier over here, her range is a lot more between the 6 to 11 than the 21 that you're going to see. So I think 7.5 is still a very fair line for her. It's a question of, is she going to make her threes or not? The other two players here on the Liberty in terms of Betnijah Laney Hamilton, I want to continue fading her. They're showing that they're not going to play her for that many minutes. All her stuff is too low though at this point. 7.5 points. Even if you predict her at 20 minutes, that's right at about what she averages in that amount of time. The rebounds, I think she's going to have a good matchup where she'll probably be on a smaller player. She is going to be guarding Napheesa on some switches when it's between her, Stewie, and even Jonquel guarding Napheesa Collier. So I think she's necessary for the defense. The problem is the other player to go over for the Liberty is Courtney Vandersloot. And I think this is a big time Courtney Vandersloot series. She's going to be getting the minutes against this team. You can see in the series on the season, first game, she played 28 minutes. She started because they were still getting Fiebich into the lineup here. Fiebich didn't start starting until much later in the season than into the playoffs. So I don't know that Courtney Vandersloot's going to be a start. Still don't have that information even 5 hours before tip of the first game of the finals. But I do think she's a lot more likely to have the minutes and do a lot with that. The assist would be something I would love. It's 2.5, I believe, on some places, but like a lot of these most common books are already at 3.5. There's no edge here in 20 minutes for her to get the 4.5 or 4 assists. Not necessarily as likely. In the playoffs, she has done that in 3 out of 6 games. So right at that number, 3.3. I do think there's a slight bump in minutes coming for her. She should be at least 20 again, like she has in a number of these playoff games. But I can't really get behind the volume that is needed to get 4 dimes. That's a lot. And that's a team that does not give up dimes to the point guard. So I'm staying away from both those players in this game. So let's get to Fiza. To Napheesa Collier, the best offensive player in the WNBA. I don't know. It's close, but I mean, she's got some Hakeem Olajuwon moves, and she's going to be in a similar situation to how she was playing against the Sun, which is they're going to try to get her easier matchups than the ones that the Liberty are going to throw at her. Problem is, she does not get a break. You look at her versus this team. There's a reason that I believe she's gone under this number at 20.5 in 3 out of 4 this year. If you do use props.cash, you can go a little bit further back and see that Fiza versus this team, not in the playoffs here, but versus the Liberty going back to the beginning of middle of last season, she has gone over 20.5 points just once and over 21.5, which is available on books. Still, she has not gone over 21.5 since last season against this team. There are some 21.5s over here that you can go under for like minus 130 on the points. It's just tough because she can get switched on. It's hard to find a matchup for her when you can take Betnijah Laney Hamilton, Jonquel Jones, and Stewie are all at least decent matchups for her, especially Stewie and Laney Hamilton, who is a little bit shorter than Fiza, but still very strong and athletic. So, the Fiza's going to have a tougher time scoring than most series. This team can throw a ton of defenders at her. The rebounds, once again, though, are a look for her against this squad, and especially because if they can get Alana Smith Jonquel Jones either off the floor or, Alana Smith is just pulling her from Jonquel from the basket. Now Napheesa is the biggest player down there to get the boards. Like, she's a little bit better rebounder than Stewie, I would say, when the two of them are going at it. They're pretty equal. It's going to be a really fun matchup between those two. But she's going to get a lot of one-on-one treatment. She's going to go down low to score. That'll lead to some offensive boards. Whether she puts the shot up or not, she'll be in position for offensive rebounds. On the other side of the ball, she's going to guard Stewie for the most part. So the rebounds aren't as much of a shoe-in as when she was guarding like Alyssa Thomas, and she's just standing in the rebounding spot for the whole game when she's on defense. But she will be playing down low against those players like Jonquel and Betnijah and Stewie, who are all capable and want to go down low and into the paint. She'll be guarding those players a lot too, based on the way that there'll be a lot of switches all over the floor. So I think the rebounds are the best play for Fiza. Kayla McBride, she's a player that we saw her finally let loose here in this last game. Went for 19 points, ruined some of the parlays. I should have just gone for the assists. But interestingly, she's at pretty much the same numbers. 13.5 over is even money. The assists are at 3.5. You get plus money to go over. You got to drink the juice to go under. In the playoffs, she's been assisting a good amount, in part because I don't believe she's been shooting that well. Yeah, only over in 3 of the 7 games that they've played in the playoffs. So I think the assist, if you're going to go over, still a better look. But this is a defense that's going to play her straight up. It's very similar to Connecticut once again. If you look at her head-to-head versus this team, over in 2 of 4. If we look back using props.cash once again, head-to-head against this team, kind of 50-50. She's over in 6 of 10. She's at 14.9 points, but one of these games, slight outlier with the amount of threes that she hit, with 26 points right here against the Liberty last year in July. Not something I really care about. I think it's still pretty much a 50-50 bet for her. She'll probably go over half the time in this series. Not really an edge to play her on the points here. And as far as the assists or the threes go, same concept, 3.5. They're juicing everything up. It's like, do you want to take her to do something that she doesn't do that often? Now, she did do it 3 times out of 4, but 4 for 6 from 3. 3 for 10. She took a lot of threes that game, and then 3 for 5 here at the end of the season. That 3 for 10 also is glaring. I don't know how she got that many threes up, but either way, I would say like this is another stay away, unfortunately. Same concept for C. Will and Bridget Carlton. I just for both of them, it's just for Bridget Carlton's, are you going to make the threes for her? And you can see in these last couple games, she shot really poorly from 3, so I'm kind of out on her. Courtney Williams, though, like if I'm going to bet on somebody in the playoffs, it's going to be Courtney Williams because she's just a baller. That's really what it comes down to. If you want my take on it, there's no edge with the numbers. It's just about being in big situations. That's kind of what Game 5 told me. But if you look at her head to head in this series, here's the assist numbers. I think she's a better under than over on the assists. There's a good chance that she doesn't get as many minutes. If you look at her minutes in this series, 24, 33, 26, 29. So right at about 26, 27 minutes per game, which is what she usually plays. These numbers are all right at her stuff. The assists are hard to come by. And I don't think there's going to be that many. I mean, it's 160.5 total for one team in the Liberty that's, scores a ton and plays at a super fast pace. So do the Lynx, but the defense is going to be ratcheted up. Sewell, somebody I would not be fading on the points because when she starts getting hot, she just keeps going. But this is a bad matchup for her. She's going to have bigger defenders on her. If it's Sabrina, that's going to be tough to get around and get a shot off. That's going to be just as good as any defense she saw against. Maybe not quite as good as like Dejanay or even maybe Ty Harris, but Ty Harris not big enough to get the hand up the way that Sabrina will. So I'm a little bit out on those players. And if I was going to go one way with Alana, it would be over. If we look at her head-to-head numbers in this one, it's really just about the shots. Once again with her, I would lean over because I think she'll be getting minutes. I don't think Jonquel is going to get run off the floor the same way that Bree Jones did. So they'll have to keep Alana out there and throw in some Maisha Hines-Allen. But the 21 minutes, 26, 30, and 24, it's going to be the same, about 25 to 27 minutes. If she gets a few more, which is hard to project, she's good for the points. But that's the only bet that I really like with her. And there's not much that I like with this this Lynx team in terms of who's going to score outside of, like I said, Fiza, tough to predict her to score. Who's it going to be from the other ones? Is Bridget Carlton going to make shots? Is Kayla McBride going to make shots? Not things I'm really trying to bet on right now, especially with Thursday Night Football, to be honest with you. And that is all the time I have for you guys in this one. Quick reminder to jump in the description of the video. It's got the links to everything you need, including the free Discord, got discounts to the VIP Discord if you don't want to miss any of the picks, and discounts for all of the tools that I'm using here, including Outlier.bet, Props.cash. All those have some really good promo codes in there for you, so you can make sure you get some discounts. So keep on rocking. We'll keep going with this WNBA Finals until I see y'all next. Happy betting.